Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, I'm David Kramer here with your Alaska weather. As always, please visit our website at arh.noaa.gov. You can get any updates to our forecast or check out any watches, warnings, or advisories that we have out. You can also call our weather info line 1-800-472-0391, get any updates to the forecast, who that means as well. And you can follow us both on Facebook and on Twitter. Taking a look now, we'll start with our warnings for the state. We have a couple up north, and we'll start off with the most northern one. That is a winter weather advisory for blowing snow. That is for areas from Kivalina to the north, and that will be in effect from noon Thursday until midnight on Friday. Further to the south, some stronger winds continuing down there as well. We have a winter storm watch out for St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast. That is for wind and blowing snow, and that will be in effect from Thursday afternoon until Friday evening. Again, you can check our website for additional details on either of those products. Starting off with our satellite imagery, we'll take a look way out west, and we have a weak low pressure system that's pushing off to the west there. That was bringing in some precipitation for the western Aleutian Islands. Starting the loop again, we'll take a look just south of the Aleutian Islands. We have several other low pressure systems not quite making it to the chain, but we can see a lot of cloud cover and moisture coming in with those systems. And then taking a look now more towards the east, we'll start off in just to the south of the Gulf of Alaska. With our main low pressure, we had a frontal system that had pushed up to the north and into the state, now starting to fall apart. But as we watch one more time, we can see this low as it pushes off to the west. We have another system coming up from the south, bringing in a lot of more southerly flow, warmer air, providing another push after our first front of southerly air, bringing in some more rain to areas all along the Gulf Coast and the southern parts of mainland Alaska. So we'll take a look at our forecast for the rest of today, and we do have that southerly flow bringing in a lot of rain to the southeast part of the state, all along the North Gulf Coast, warm enough to keep rain throughout all of these locations. But as we move further inland into places around the Copper River Basin, going to see primarily snow, but there is a chance for some freezing rain. As we move out further to the west as well, the lower Kuskokwim Valley, primarily snow there again, but still a chance of some light freezing rain for the rest of today. We have some rain pushing down south towards Kodiak Island. Not a lot for much of the interior until we get way to the northern part of the state. We do have some fog along the Arctic coastline and then some areas of snow out there by Point Lay. We have some stronger winds out there right now that are bringing in some blowing snow conditions to that location as well. And then not a lot of precipitation until we get down to the YK Delta area, where we do have some snow showers pushing through. And down in the Bristol Bay area, especially along the Aleutian chain and then the Aleutian Islands, we do have some rain out there. And then way to the west, cold enough with that low to see some snow mixed in with the rain. As we move into the evening hours and overnight, we do have some isolated areas of rain and snow showers way out west, but warm enough. Even with the northerly flow coming down, we will see some rain throughout the central and eastern Aleutian Islands. Also see some rain for the Pribilofs, and then with our lows starting to push to the west there, we do have rain throughout the Alaska Peninsula into the Bristol Bay area, but cold enough further to the north to see a rain and snow mix in the Kuskokwim Delta. But as we get into the Yukon Delta, primarily snow up there, and that'll push more inland towards the Galena area. Up along the Arctic coastline, some fog as we get into the western parts of the Kotzebue Sound. Fog also along the Arctic coastline, but the stronger winds near the Kivalina area, we are going to see some blowing snow up there. Moving down into the rest of the interior, down south near the Eagle area, down into the Copper River Basin, going to see some snow overnight in those locations. And then the Susitna Valley and the lower Kuskokwim Valley, going to see primarily snow, but that chance of freezing rain continuing for those areas. Also a chance of freezing rain as we get into places around the Cook Inlet area, all the way down into the Kenai area. And then as we move to the other side of the Kenai Peninsula, along the rest of the northern Gulf Coast into the Panhandle, southerly flow continuing through all the overnight hours, bringing in more rain with the warmer conditions from the south. As we move into Thursday, our front now pushing inland, still with the southerly flow, bringing in more warm air and more rain to the southeast. That's also true along the northern Gulf Coast. But again, as we get further inland, going to see that transitioning over to snow. Now we have our main precipitation line pushing more into the interior, making it up close to the Fort Yukon area and down into the Fairbanks area. We're going to see some snow out there, but the rest of the interior and up north through the Brooks Range and along the Arctic coastline, not going to see any precipitation on Thursday. As we drop down the western side of the state, St. Lawrence Island, going to see some snow, especially on that northeastern side. And then as we drop down YK Delta area, throughout into northern parts of the Bristol Bay area and lower Kuskokwim Valley, we are going to see snow in most of those locations, but a chance for all of those 3 locations to see some freezing rain mixed in. As we get further to the south, though, Kodiak Island out through the eastern Aleutian Islands, going to see rain out there. Colder finally with the northerly flow switching over the precipitation in the central Aleutian Islands to a rain and snow mix, and then continuing to see rain and snow out for the western Aleutians. Then finally, as we move into Friday, more of that northerly flow bringing snow to the Pribilofs and extending the rain and snow line all the way out to the eastern Aleutian Islands, and the remainder of the Aleutian is going to see that rain and snow as well. But still going to see some rain down there at Kodiak Island, and then as we move into the Aleutian Range, colder there, going to see rain and snow mix, and then a lot of chances of snow throughout the rest of Bristol Bay area, YK Delta area, all the way up along the west coast, the Arctic coast, and throughout the majority of the interior, expecting a lot of instability out there, so going to see some snow showers throughout many of those locations. Down along the Gulf Coast, going to see some weaker, but still going to see enough warm air from the south to see rain for the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound area, and then down into the Panhandle. Taking a look now at temperatures, starting off in the southeast in the mid-40s for most locations in the south, but then as we push further to the north, Skagway seeing 39 as of 2 p.m. this afternoon. Moving into the south central along the coastline, mid-40s there, but dropping down into the mid-30s as we get further inland, 33 for Anchorage, 39 for Valdez. Colder there at Glen Allen, seeing 20 degrees as of 2 p.m. And then warmer out in the Susitna Valley, Talkeetna, 41 degrees this afternoon. Moving into the interior part of the state, a wide range of temperatures. We have anywhere from -27 at Arctic Village, 23 as we get closer to Delta Junction, then in the single digits and teens for much of the rest of the interior. Up along the Arctic coastline, well below 0 there, with Wainwright down to -21 degrees, Dead Horse -17. As we move into the Kotzebue Sound area, variation of temperatures here as well, with the warmest being Kotzebue at 21 degrees, right around 30 degrees for the Norton Sound, Nome being the warmest, 33 degrees there. Gamble over there, 19 degrees this afternoon. Taking a look down in the southwest part of the state, right around freezing for the Kuskokwim Delta and Bristol Bay area, up a little bit warmer, upper 30s to up to around 40 degrees at King Salmon. Down in the Alaska Peninsula, mid-30s to lower 40s there, 41 for Sand Point. Down in the Aleutian Islands, right around 40 degrees, and then getting a little bit colder as we get further to the west, 35 for Shemya this afternoon, and 37 for St. Paul, 38 for St. George. Staying with temperatures, starting with our lows out in the Aleutian Islands, mid-30s for most of the Aleutians, warmer as we get further off to the east, and then down in the Bristol Bay area, only are getting down to right around freezing. Dillingham down right at freezing, 32 degrees there. Dropping down into the upper teens, Bethel 18 degrees for a low tonight. And then in the Norton Sound, dropping down into the lower 20s there, with Nome dropping down to 21 degrees. Up in the Kotzebue Sound, variation continuing there. Shishmaref staying pretty warm, 11 degrees compared to other locations around the Kotzebue Sound area. And then staying well below 0 for lows tonight, all the way along the Arctic coast, -14 for Barrow. Then for the rest of the interior part of the state, we have -37 there at Arctic Village, getting pretty cold. Fort Yukon -19, but the remainder staying in the single digits to mid-teens. And then as we drop down to the south central locations, we are seeing temperatures right around freezing for the most part until we get to the North Gulf Coast, where we're seeing temperatures a little bit warmer there. Homer down to 37 degrees tonight, Seward down to 39 degrees, And then we have Cordova only dropping down to around 41 degrees tonight. Kodiak dropping down to 39, and then down in the Panhandle, temperatures anywhere from the lower 40s in the north and to the upper 40s as we get further to the south, with Juneau down to 41 degrees tonight. Highs for tomorrow staying in the southeast, not a whole lot of change. Lower 40s up north and then mid 40s as we get further to the south there. Skagway getting up to 42, 43 for Yakutat. Then in the south central, mid to upper 30s there. Warmer once again along the coast. Kodiak getting up to 43 degrees for tomorrow. In the interior, some of those warmer temperatures, especially in the south, pushing in. But as we get to the northern parts of the interior, stay in the single digits to lower teens there. Arctic Village below zero, again -2 there. And then staying below zero for highs tomorrow all the way along the Arctic coast. Wainwright and Deadhorse both only getting up to -10 for tomorrow. Down in the Kotzebue Sound area, single digits to the mid-teens. In the mid-20s as we get into the Norton Sound area, Gamble only getting up to around 18 degrees there. Lower 20s in the YK Delta area, with Macoriac getting up to 27 degrees for tomorrow. Mid-30s to right around 40 as we get into the Bristol Bay area. Then throughout the Aleutian Islands, right in the lower 40s there. And we have St. Paul getting up to 38 degrees for a high tomorrow. Switching up, we'll take a look at our aviation weather. Widespread MVFR conditions all throughout the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, with some more isolated areas of IFR, especially along the coastline from the Kuskokwim Delta down into the Bristol Bay area. And that's going to continue as we move around Kodiak Island and eastern parts of the Kenai Peninsula through Prince William Sound, and then some more MVFR conditions as we get down in the Panhandle. We'll notice with the lack of precipitation we're seeing up north, not going to see a whole lot of lower flying conditions in the interior and throughout the Brooks Range. For the passes, AKwx should remain VFR for tomorrow. Adigan should also be VFR tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill both be IFR conditions tomorrow. Rainy Pass should also be instrument flight rules. And then Windy Pass will be marginal for tomorrow, as well as Isabel and Mentasta Pass. We have Tanita Pass expected to be IFR throughout the day tomorrow. Portage will also be IFR, as well as Chilkoot and White. Taking a look at our freezing level, we have some of that warmer air coming in with the southerly flow out into the southeast part of the state. And you can see a tongue of that warmer air pushing into the interior, and that surface freezing line to the south of that is one of the reasons why we're seeing that chance of some light freezing and rain in a lot of those locations, with that warmer air overrunning those colder surface temperatures. So we move out further to the west, we have our freezing line heading off out through the northern Bering Sea with some pockets of warmer air further to the south. Again, seeing a lot of rain with those warmer conditions. And as we look at our icing, we do have from the eastern Aleutian Islands throughout much of the Gulf Coast area up into many locations of the interior. A lot of icing throughout with all that rain that we're expecting to see there. And then above 8,000 feet as we're in the Alaska Peninsula area, up a little bit higher above 9,000 feet YK Delta. Similarly for much of the eastern part of the interior, above 9,000 feet there. Higher in the south central, above 10,000 feet for most locations, and dropping back down to above 9,000 feet as we get over the Panhandle. For our jet stream tomorrow, starting off over the Panhandle, southwesterly flow around 90 knots, getting up to as high as 105 knots as we get a little bit further to the south. Off the coastline of the Arctic coast, we have westerly flow around 80 knots there, picking up pretty quickly, getting up to as high as 140 knots as it exits out over Canada. Then out over the western parts of the Bering Sea, northerly flow around 70 knots, becoming more easterly as it veers off back over to Russia. Then in south of the Aleutian chain, we have a 125 knot jet out of a westerly direction, getting up to as high as 135 knots. Dropping us down to 9,000 feet out over the Bering Sea, primarily northerly flow, weakest out west, 15 knots there, getting up to as high as around 35 to 40 knots as we get out over the central parts of the Bering Sea. Then moving out over mainland Alaska, we have some easterly flow there, pretty strong around 40 knots, but dropping down over the northern parts of the state down to around 15 knots. And some southerly flow out over the North Pacific into the Gulf and parts of the Panhandle there, and that's getting up to as high as 70 knots as we move off further to the east. As we drop down to 3,000 feet, similarly strong winds as we look over parts of the Panhandle, 40 to 60 knots, but dropping off really rapidly as we move inland. Barrier jets setting up along the coastline there with some of the stronger winds staying right along the Gulf Coast. As we move out over mainland Alaska, some easterly flow anywhere from 20 to 35 knots. Again, getting stronger as we get further to the north out of an easterly direction there, around 35 knots. And then out over the Bering Sea, becoming more northerly again, weaker out west, 20 knots there, getting up to as high as 40 knots. Once again out over the central Bering Sea and central Aleutian Islands, and then dropping down around our low pressure down to around 30 knots there. Finally, we have our turbulence chart from the eastern or central Aleutian Islands out through places of the Alaska Peninsula. We do have below 4,000 feet there. We have an area up around the Seward Peninsula extending into the northern interior, and then down around the St. Lawrence Island area below 4,000 feet. And up along the Arctic coastline, we do have below 4,000 feet there. But our biggest area of turbulence stretches from the Kuskokwim Delta through the Bristol Bay area and southern parts Kenai Peninsula and Prince William Sound, and then out over into the Panhandle. Panhandle area below 6,000 feet expected there with those stronger winds, especially through the channel terrain. Then out over the southwest part of the state below 5,000 feet there. And if you stay with us, we'll be back shortly with the marine forecast.
There are some important things we can all do to avoid runway incursions. Things we probably all know, or have known but forgotten, or that we sometimes overlook because of distractions. Some of these things are simply plain old common sense. Always look, listen, and expect the unexpected. Minimize distractions by keeping a sterile cockpit while taxiing. Know where you are and where you're going. Never guess. Always know. And if you don't know or are uncertain, always ask. And that brings me to a word or two about the best ally we pilots have at Howard Airport, the air traffic controller.
Runway 25 left at Delta position and hold traffic on the Delta.
These are the professionals dedicated to leading us safely through the often complex and confusing runways and taxiways and traffic of a Howard Airport.
Cessna 60 Papa turning base at the 605 freeway, report turning final.
The pace of air traffic communications can be confusing, even overwhelming. We should not feel hesitant to ask controllers to repeat an instruction, to ask for progressive taxi instructions if we need them.
Arrow ground, Cherokee 32123, request progressive taxi instructions, please. November, Charlie, Bravo.
If you don't know, ask. If you aren't sure, verify.
When communicating with air traffic control, always listen before you transmit.
Cessna 3284 Delta, holding position, runway 19 right.
Also, listen to what the controller is saying to other aircraft. It can have a critical bearing on your safety. Again, maintaining situational awareness at all times is key. Be sure you understand all air traffic control instructions. If you receive a clearance you don't understand or is contrary to your position on the airport, you should verify the clearance.
Cessna 4530 Sierra Papa. Runway 19er full length, cleared for takeoff.
Tower Tower, Cessna 453 Sierra Papa. Is at Bravo 3. Verify we're still cleared for takeoff.
Cessna 3 Sierra Papa. Negative, hold your position.
43 Sierra Papa. Holding short, runway 19 at Bravo 3.
Runway incursions occur most frequently when pilots enter or cross a runway without authorization. Typically, communication between the pilot and air traffic control is good. Pilots hear and read back hold short instructions and know what they're supposed to do.
Cessna 93018, hold short, runway 26 right.
But they cross hold short lines or taxi on the runway without authorization anyway. Always read back all hold short instructions.
Arrow 1504, hold short, runway 6 left.
Arrow 1504, hold short, runway 6 left.
A simple Roger won't do. This applies to position and hold and clearances to enter a runway as well.
Cessna 80138, position and hold, runway 25 left.
Cessna 80138, position and hold, runway 25 left.
We can avoid most runway incursions by reducing distraction in the cockpit while taxiing, familiarizing ourselves with our departure and our destination airports, and staying alert at all times.
Be sure to write down taxi instructions, but never do it on the move. It can be a distraction. The same is true with checklists. Conduct them while stopped, never on the move. Pilots, controllers, and drivers all rely on their eyes as their primary sensors. And the simple fact is, our eyes don't work as well at night as they do during the day. The visual acuity we lose at night, combined with inconsistent cockpit lighting, canopy reflections, and possible rain, snow, or fog, make taxi, takeoff, and landing operations that seem easy during the day a real challenge at night. Pilots should observe a few simple lighting standards that will help those around them maintain their situational awareness. When taxiing into position and hold, turn on all exterior lights except landing lights. This will make your aircraft more conspicuous to other aircraft on final. Don't turn on your landing lights until you have been given clearance to take off. If you see an aircraft with its landing lights turned on, it's a clear signal that that aircraft is moving or is about to move down the runway for takeoff. When instructed to cross a runway, turn on all lights, including landing lights. The exception would be if your lights would interfere with someone holding or approaching from the other side of the runway. Also, when you line up for departure at night, consider lining up about 3 feet to the left or right of center line, so another pilot on final can more easily distinguish your aircraft from the runway lights.
Welcome back. Starting off, we'll take a quick look at our sea surface temperatures. Things to know here, we have a lot of the colder temperatures with the sea ice coming down, but throughout the Bering Sea, some warmer temperatures there, and something of note is that right around the Pribilofs, they've been right around 4 degrees Celsius for a couple weeks now. Not a whole lot of change there, but we are expecting with some of the northerly flow, some of this to slowly push down to the south. Then a quick look at our ice edge as well. Right now, we do have some in the Bristol Bay area, but primarily from around the YK Delta area up through the St. Lawrence Island area. Now with that northerly flow, we are expecting this to start to push further to the south, and eventually we'll make it down to St. Matthew Island, but there's a very low, below 10% chance that we are going to have the ice edge make it down to the Pribilofs this season. So a little bit warmer than usual, but we also do have some ice in the Cook Inlet area developing, but with warmer temperatures, might see some of that diminish over the next couple days. Now for our main marine forecast, we do have southeasterly flow throughout much of the southeast, anywhere from 30 to 40 knots. Weaker as we get further to the north, variable flow north of Juneau there around 10 knots, and then near Yakutat, northeasterly flow around 20 knots. Seas pretty high out in the Gulf, 18 to 20 feet there, and 6 to 8 feet for the majority of the inside waters. Again, lower up north around 2 feet there. Into Friday, pretty southerly flow, 20 to 30 knots, the strongest being to the south, weakest as we get further to the north again. Seas dropping down 15 to 16 feet out in the Gulf and around 4 or 5 feet in the inside waters. For the south central, flow primarily out of an easterly direction and becoming more southerly as we get closer to Kodiak Island there, 25 to 35 knots. As we move into around the Cook Inlet area, more northerly flow, 20 to 25 knots there. Seas in there around 5 to 7 feet, highest west of the Barren Islands, and then out in the Gulf on this side, we have seas anywhere from 17 to 19 feet, only around 6 feet in Prince William Sound. Then on Friday, southeasterly flow throughout most locations, around 25 knots until we get into the Prince William Sound area, dropping down to around 15 knots. In northern parts of Cook Inlet, northeast, around 10 knots there. Seas up to as high as 17 feet in the Gulf. Down for the Alaska Peninsula, we have flow around our low pressure. You can kind of see how that circles around the area of low centered around the Chignik area. And then we have that getting up to as high as out of a southerly direction, 30 knots. Southeast of Chignik, with seas getting up to as high as 15 feet on the Pacific side, 6 to 9 feet on the Bering side. Then on Friday, similar flow pattern around that low pressure system, 20 to 30 knots, seas highest on the Pacific side, again 11 to 15 feet there. Out over the Aleutian Islands, northerly flow, 25 to 30 knots, a little bit weaker out west, only around 20 knots there. Then on Friday, continuing that northerly flow, 15 to 20 knots, 9 to 10 feet for seas. Then stronger as we get out to the east, 25 to 30 knots there, becoming more northwesterly on the Pacific side, with seas getting up to as high as 13 feet on the Pacific side, 13 to 15 feet on the Bering side. West coast of the state, northerly flow, a lot of freezing spray till we get down to around the Cape Newingham area, with winds up to as high as 40 knots up north, 30 knots as we get further to the south. Seas highest out west around 14 feet. Then on Friday, continuing the northerly flow and continuing the freezing spray, 35 to 40 knots up north. South of Nunavik Island, we are going to see that becoming northeasterly, 25 knots there. Seas highest out west again, 15 to 16 feet. Along the Arctic coast, we have easterly flow around 30 knots, becoming more northeasterly, 25 to 30, and then northerly, 30 to 35 as we get off to the west. Then on Friday, remaining pretty similar out of a northerly direction around 35 knots, drop it down to 25 to 30 as we get closer towards Barrow, and then back up to 30 knots as we get off to the east. Quick recap for the state. Our main low pressure system with its front bringing in southerly flow and a lot of warmer air, some rain throughout the Panhandle area, rain along the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island and Bristol Bay areas. A chance of some of that mixing in with some snow and light freezing rain in the Susitna Valley and lower Kuskokwim Valley. Some snow for the Copper River Basin and southeast parts of the interior. So you move off towards the Galena area, you're going to see some snow showers there down into the Yukon Delta, and then fog along the Arctic coast with some areas of blowing snow north of Kivalina, and then some areas of fog with that as well. And then as we move down to the south, we have some rain throughout much of the Aleutian Islands, rain and snow out for the western Aleutians. Then into Thursday, rain-snow mix for many of the Aleutian Islands, a little bit warmer out east. Going to see some rain there, and you're going to see some snow throughout much of the southwest part of the state, but a chance of light freezing rain with that, and then snow for southern parts of the interior, rain down in the south central. With Alaska Weather, I'm David Kramer. Thanks for being with us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.